heuristic. And by doing that, you can actually break, like chain analysis is using common input ownership heuristic to track people. So by doing this one simple thing, you can actually break that assumption. And if a certain percentage of people do it, then that actually breaks the assumption across the board and it's no longer reliable. And there's actually some scalability and privacy benefits to that as well. Like if you are the receiver, but you also want to do a little bit of coin consolidation with what you are receiving, you can just include an input that will basically be merged in with the money you are receiving on the output. So it does cost nominal fees to the sender to do this, but it's one of the solutions that I really like because it doesn't require a soft fork. This is something that we can deploy right now, that is deployed right now, that we can do to increase privacy by default and scalability. Because a lot of times you can kind of, like exchanges will often, that's an example of like they're putting multiple inputs in and they're going out to multiple senders, but then you can kind of like add stuff on the input side and it does really great things.
Awesome. Jimmy has a question. Yeah.
Is that like a pay join or a pay join where the receiver also participates?
So he's asking if it's a pay join where the receiver also participates.
Like, yeah.
He means, I think he means coin join.
Yes.
I think our familiarity is around coin join, but it's different, right?
Yeah, it's different, but that is basically what it is. Yes, the receiver also participates. And right now, I believe they're currently working on multi-party pay joins, so you can have multiple people contributing to the inputs and multiple people getting outputs out as well, which is pretty cool.
Interesting. Any other questions? No other questions. No other questions. Oh, we got one over here.
Could you please go into more detail on the open source aspect of the Bitcoin or BitDev?
Oh, so he's curious about the open source aspects of BitDev, BitDevs.
Yeah.
And like how that functions and works.
Yeah, I will kind of do a big overview. Hey, Jonas. So BitDev started off as a meetup in New York
Jonas.
City. I want to say around 2011, a really long time ago, and it's still going on today. And the idea is you bring a bunch of people into one room and you talk about some pretty deep technical Bitcoin topics, but everyone follows the Chatham House rule, which means that you can repeat what you have heard at BitDevs, but you are not allowed to attribute the person that spoke it. And so over time, different cities, we call this the Socratic Seminar, which is like not a term unique to BitDevs, but different cities are basically like, I want to do this. I want to bring this back to my city. So if you have one in your area, I highly recommend going to it. If you don't have one, it's in the spirit of open source to start one, which I definitely encourage.
Awesome. Jonas, do you want to say hi to everybody? Hang on a second. Guys, say hi to Jonas.
Hey, everyone. Sorry, couldn't be there. I'm mostly looking at lights right now, but it looks nice. I'm Jonas. I work at ChainCode Labs. We are a team that just works on open source. No product, no revenue. We exist to do research and development. We work on Lightning. We work on Bitcoin Core. We have some research that's done out of here. And we're here to work on Bitcoin and make it better.
Awesome. Satsi, do you want to kick it off?
I think actually, Jonas, do you want to kick it off? I will kick it off by deferring it to Jonas.
Sure.
Okay.
I think I think what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about our educational background and how to get involved with Bitcoin open source, which we affectionately called BOSS, Bitcoin Open Source Software. And the idea is that, first of all, this is a permissionless system, and everybody knows that anyone can contribute to Bitcoin. But the actual mechanism for how to get onboarded onto a Bitcoin project, I think, is a little bit lost, and those are the kinds of things that we focus on. I'd also love to, maybe Satsi can tell us a little bit about her journey from someone who was on the outside, and there's someone, she worked out of the industry as a software engineer, then she was in the industry, and then also witnessed her transition over to Bitcoin open source. But maybe you can tell us a little bit about what that was like, Satsi.
Yeah, I do feel like I've experienced the full arc. I didn't skip any steps. So I guess the story starts when I was working for a blockchain company, and I would kind of go to work every day very, very confused. I was like, we're just building a database. And every day I'd be like, okay, well, it appears that the Bitcoin people know what they're talking about. They've got the whole blockchain thing figured out. So let me check that out. So I learned more and more about Bitcoin, and how, as everyone's story is the same, we kind of like fall down that rabbit hole. And I started getting more interested in like Bitcoin specifically and less interested in the blockchain element of Bitcoin, because we know that's just one small part. So over time, just, spending more time reading books. I read Mastering Bitcoin. And in 2018, I went to my first conference, Bitcoin conference, which was Crypto Springs. It was the greatest conference ever. Rest in peace. It doesn't exist anymore. But it came to a point where I just I couldn't take it anymore. I really wanted to work in Bitcoin. And so on January 3rd, 2019, which is the 10-year Genesis block anniversary, I handed in my resignation letter. I was like, I'm getting out of here. I don't know where I'm going, but it's not here. And I was very fortunate that through Crypto Springs, I actually met somebody who was working at Casa, the multi-sig provider company. And at the time, they actually were also doing the nodes, which I was familiar with. And I did a couple, did the whole interview process, and I actually, to my surprise, landed a job there. And I spent a number of years there working on their back-end systems, which was convenient because that's where my skill set was, but it allowed me to also get exposure to Bitcoin, which is what the real name of the game was. So I will say 50% of my time was just doing normal software engineering stuff. I was putting together reports for the business development team. I was on call periodically. We had to do customer support every so often. I was helping the DevOps team. We were shipping just features light and dark mode and mobile updates, all kinds of stuff like that. But then the other half of the time, I was working on the Bitcoin side, which was the best part. I loved it so much. I got to interact with the actual open source elements that make Bitcoin so special. And I remember my favorite project, it also made me nearly rip all my hair out, was I implemented BIP 174, the PSBT code for the backend. And it was so cool to be that close to the protocol. And at the time, I was using the Bitcoin JS library, so I got to interact with the maintainers for that. And it was just so rewarding and fulfilling to be able to use the software, that other people are using, and report bugs and ask questions and just really engage with that ecosystem. So spent a good amount of time there. But by 2022, I had my first child, and he wasn't quite 1 year old. And the whole working full-time thing, because I was working more than 40 hours a week, you know how it always goes like that. It wasn't a good fit for my lifestyle anymore. So I decided to leave and kind of dip my toes in Bitcoin open source. And, ChainCode's got the best resources out there. I ended up doing their Bitcoin protocol design seminar. It was absolutely incredible. And then afterwards, they had an onboarding to Bitcoin Core cohort. So in that amount of time, I decided to start to sample everything in the space. And I actually found funding to just work on a bunch of different things. So I was working on Bitcoin Core for a little bit. I was working on a personal project called, they're zines, but they are little booklets that I write about Bitcoin tech. And this was a way to facilitate my understanding of something, but also to share what I had learned with others. And it was a real challenge because all of these, it's on a single piece of paper. So trimming all that information down is very, very difficult, especially when I get to the point where I consult the subject matter experts and they tell me 5 more pages of information. I just don't have space to fit. But I do very much enjoy that challenge. That's also when I started becoming a co-organizer, Boston BitDevs. We had one before the pandemic, but everyone left the city and never came back. And there was a real demand growing for that. And I do think that community work is very underappreciated. It's people don't usually want to do it, but it means a lot. And so I think that's really important. And then the last thing I worked on was a project. It's a game called Saving Satoshi. You can find it at savingsatoshi.com. Me and the whole big team built that. And it's basically this RPG coding adventure designed to get you involved with the inner workings of the protocol in a way that's really fun and engaging. And for a brief moment, you forget what you might actually be doing. So was kind of doing all that stuff on my own. I also made a project called Try Bitcoin, which is a little website where you get to type in these like pseudo commands into a very not real terminal, but I think there's some magic there in that you get to like kind of understand what's going on, especially if you don't normally deal with the command line or a terminal on the day-to-day basis, and kind of just walk people through some of these details because I think there is a real big appetite for technical education. I think a lot of people are underserved. A lot of people are visual learners. In the last few years, that's definitely changed and it's progressed in a way that's very positive. But there's still tons of work to do. And so anyways, all that's happening. And then I have my second kid. And now I really don't have time to code. Like forget the idea of sitting down for like a couple of hours to get into a flow state. So at that point, I transitioned more into educational work. That's how I found myself in the Bitcoin Dev project. I also help out with the BOSS program, the BOSS Challenge, as it's now known. And I kind of found myself here, which I'm really happy about. I guess I can say I don't know how I got here, but it was a multi-year journey, but well worth the effort.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for explaining that. Jonas, yeah, I go to you now.
Yeah, I mean, my journey's a lot less exciting. I think that Satsi really is the kind of person that really thrives in open source because she's a self-starter and she sort of looks for opportunities and where things are needed. And so sort of, maybe in the theme of this conference, I can talk about a little bit of the things that we've seen of what the characteristics of people that really thrive in open source. And I don't think that's honestly for everybody. And I think that's okay. Open source is open to everybody, but there are some cultural things to it and some some difficulties to it that I think self-select in a lot of ways. So just a few things that come to mind and something I tell people that participate in our programs. One of the biggest things that you can do besides being a spectacular coder and contributor is just like creating a positive impact on others and like, helping others, going out of your way to be friendly. So much of our interactions are on GitHub and it's so easy to misinterpret like what someone said or that they're not welcome or any of those things, like showing up and not just like opening a PR with some slop, but actually like putting a lot of effort into really making sure that this is a reflection of your personality and what you can contribute to the project. First impressions really do matter because your GitHub history endures. And so people can click through and pretty easily see the kinds of things you've done in the past. And so if you open a pretty sloppy PR as your first PR, it's a poor reflection of like what kind of contributor you'll grow into. And so, yeah, we want people that are thoughtful and people that really create like this positive impact on the project and on the other people they're working with. Another thing is like maintaining perspective. So, like doing this is quite hard. It takes oftentimes like, financially, it may not be like the high, the way you can earn the most money. It may not mean, you're like immediately, like if you've ever been a startup CTO or whatever like that, like there's no one reporting to you and you're not managing people and maybe you don't have like that prestige and you have to explain to your family and friends why you're taking this path. But this is really impactful technology. And what you get out of this is the financial or financial freedom, hopefully, is what we're building, but the professional freedom to work on the things that you care about most, and to work on really hard problems. And I think for a lot of us that have worked in normal, digital companies where you're sort of like, the equivalent of like flipping burgers while you write your code, it's maybe not it's much more exciting and it's much more, it really can change the world. If you can find the way that, for you to leverage your own skills to do good.
Yeah.
Satsi, you wanted to say, sorry, jump in.
I was just going to elaborate on that kind of like professional freedom, because I think many of us have worked in companies, especially if you're an engineer, where you have a product team that's like, okay, you need to deliver this by the end of the month and you need to do as best as you can, but like we still have to deliver it. And something that's different about Bitcoin open source is like Bitcoin moves very slowly, very intentionally, because if you mess this up, it's like $1 trillion mistake. And so there's the culture really values like correctness and doing things right the first time, and like making the code the best it can be. And I think a lot of people that care about their craft, like this is really important to them. And so to be able to do that as part of your job and like have that be one of the values that everyone else around you agrees on is really something.
Yeah, I think there's just so many things to love, like and that's like a very mushy word, but like when you're in the flow and you're doing work that you really care about and it's actually going to be used by millions of people around the world, and not in like a game kind of way, but like cross-border censorship resistant money, like that feels good. And I've had the opportunity to land a few like PRs in Bitcoin Core myself, and like I just wanted to feel what it was like. Um, and it's there's nothing like it. Like there's just like it feels just so gratifying, and knowing that I'm just part of this project is really satisfying, and something I can always go back to. But that said, like it can feel really lonely out there, because no one owes you anything. You open a PR and like you're not gonna like the expectation that someone's just gonna jump on it and like give you a perfect review and give you a high five and like celebrate like your contribution. Like it's not like a startup or like the corporate environment, which have all these ratchets built in for you to like continue to like work up towards something. Open source is like scratch your own itch, and if you don't convince other people to care about your stuff, then they're not going to care about your stuff. And so there's a lot of self-validation there that happens, and that can be if you're doing that like for the first time in your adult life, where no one's like giving you a performance review and saying like great job and can't wait to talk to you next quarter, or you're not getting that weekly feedback and one-on-ones or things like that, it's really hard to feel like am I doing the right thing? Am I actually like on the right track? Am I progressing? And so there's this self-validation I think is really important. In the beginning too, oftentimes you're not doing what you think is productive. So everybody wants to like sort of start their journey by writing code. Like I'm going to go out, I'm going to go land a PR. Maybe it's like a pretty meaty feature. But the reality is oftentimes these projects have been going on for, at least years, but most likely, in the case of Bitcoin Core, like decades. And you just showed up and like, we haven't just been waiting for you, like work has been going on. And so in the beginning, it's very much like giving to others and showing your competency by review and showing your competency by studying what other people have done. It's very much like, I'm not into this at all, but like, I would imagine what like martial arts is like. It's sort of like doing the movements a bunch of times slowly and really mastering it, and then being able to apply it in real time as you get better at it. And so in the beginning, I think the best thing you can do is just like create a record, because, from the outside, if you're not like writing a comment or writing code or anything like that, I can't tell from your GitHub profile if you're like watching TV or sleeping. Like we're going to have to absorb a lot of what other people do in our learning in the beginning. And so if you can create a record of what that's like, and that could be something like an engineering log, that could be like an informal, publishing your notes. That could be a blog or something like that. But just like creating this record of what you're doing and what you're learning is really good for external auditing. But it's also really good to remind yourself about the progress that you're making, because you're going to have down days. And it won't feel like you're going anywhere that day, but you can look back, to the previous month and be like, oh, I can't believe like that was only a month ago. And so as you're going down this rabbit hole, like do a little bit of work to document what that's been like. And the more granular you can get, the better notes you'll have to remember stuff that you might have forgotten. Finish what you start. Like we all have, unfinished projects on our GitHub, and, have ideas in our head. And if we only had time, like see stuff through. So if you continue to like open things up but not close it, it really says a lot about sort of your at least like this part of your personality and your character. And what we need for Bitcoin open source contributors is like really follow through and the diligence that it takes to sort of like fight through the inertia of these really long PRs that are like, very meticulously being looked over by reviewers who otherwise could be doing something else. Like, just understand, like, every review is a gift. Even if it's not what you want to hear, it's this gift from someone else who's taking their time to look at your code. And it's all, in the spirit of trying to do good. But yeah, like you should really see things through. And sometimes that can be difficult. And the last one is like dream big, I think Bitcoin, like this permissionless system, allows you to think about like the impact that you can have and the fact that you're touching people's lives and like moving money on the other side of the world. I don't know. It's really inspiring, and I think leaning into that inspiration, even when things feel slow, I think is really important.
Yeah, I think I love that you pointed out nobody's nobody has to review your stuff. And once you accept that, then yeah, some of the feedback you get, you kind of appreciate differently. So I have a very personal story where kind of like the biggest piece of work I've done in Bitcoin Core is a PR to add some like network message stats to an existing RPC. It's a pretty big PR. And so I spent like a long time working on it. I had mentorship, I had a concept act, I had people guiding me in the ticket. And then I opened my PR and it was just completely shredded to pieces. It was like destroyed. And it's it's the extent where like the work has since been taken over by another contributor. And I think I might have like co-signed on like 2 of the commits. I certainly helped get it to where it is now. But yeah, when I first saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, like this person must hate me. Like I feel like such a bad engineer. But then I kind of thought about it and I was like, wait, they don't have to be looking at this at all. And they're actually looking at it because they care and they want to see it done right. So I ended up, doing, I think, 2 more iterations on it. I learned so much along the way, but I do think that like working in open source, especially Bitcoin open source, will teach you like so many things about yourself, and you will, at the longer you stay in it, the stronger your internal compass gets, because you're going to be put through so many trials. You're going to be put through so many scenarios where you're like Jonas said, like, am I working on what's correct? Like, nobody's managing me. Nobody's telling me what to do. Nobody's prioritizing things for me. And you have to really, like, come back to your first principles and say, why am I here? What am I working on? What am I trying to accomplish? And so in practice, that looks like keeping that log, which is also really important if you are funded by anybody. Like, they're going to want to see what you're working on. And I think we should also definitely get into the specifics of funding, but also goal setting and, like, checking in on yourself and scheduling some breaks for yourself too, because again, there's nobody checking on your own wellness, and nobody holding you accountable to the goals that you set. So it really can be mentally exhausting to be responsible for all these things, but it's also very liberating that you have full control over all of this. But kind of, Jonas, do you want to speak to how the grants kind of work in Bitcoin? Because I feel like this model of funding is very unique to our industry.
Yeah. So I just maybe want to start with saying that grants are oftentimes not like prospective grants, as in the best way to get a grant is to do the work essentially for free and to show that you're capable of it and then apply. And so even if you have it doesn't have to be a huge sample, but you need to show your capability before you put your application out there. I've seen a lot less success, even from what I think are qualified people, when they apply for something they have yet to do anything in. And so if you're looking for an open source grant, my suggestion is that you just start now and sort of get your feet wet and show what you can do, and then go put in the application. And that's very different than the corporate world. The corporate world is you go to an interview, you do a whiteboard challenge, and then they say, well, okay, well, this person can do this job. Bitcoin, and I think this is also different than other like alternative projects, very much relies on you already having done the work, and now we'll give you financial fuel to continue that. So that's quite different. There are some differences between the different funding organizations. So there are places with that just do offices and they don't do grants. ChainCode is one of those. Localhost out in California is one of those. 2140, which is in Amsterdam, is one of those. And then there are places. I guess there's maybe only one actually. There's a place with an office and do grants, and that's Brink. And then there are grant organizations, OpenSats, HRF, Spiral. Those are places that like, you apply for a grant. Maelstrom would be another one, and they sort of approve your grant. Usually, it's for if you've been around for a while, it's usually like the standard is a year. If you're new and you don't have much track record, it might be a little bit shorter. And then there's some that are now moving to long-term support, which are multi-year commitments. So that's the lay of the land. Satsi, did I explain that properly? Is there anything you would want to fill in?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that, again, when you look at the greater open source industry, this grant model is, I haven't seen it anywhere else. I mean, I could be wrong. Let me know if I am. But in the spirit of transparency, I will say, like, if you were working in industry, so if you're working in like Silicon Valley, you're going to be making a lot of money. If you're working in the Bitcoin industry, you'll probably be making good money. If you work in the Bitcoin open source industry off of a grant, there is a higher chance you're not going to be making what you were before. And all these grants, they typically don't come with health insurance. Though we see some people like stacking grants, a lot of them allow you to do that because many of them are for different amounts. But if you are new to Bitcoin open source and you are in a grant, there is that there's a lot of accountability in the beginning before you can reach the point where you can have a multi-year long-term support grant. And speaking to people in the space, it's a little bit stressful, but it comes with the territory. It comes, like, you get all these perks of being able to work on something you truly believe in, something that aligns with your values, work on interesting problems, the flexibility of it, which is something that really resonated with me. Like, I was able to have the work-life balance that I wanted. Like, the downside is the compensation isn't quite as much. But people find ways to make that work, including, like, because they don't have to live in a certain place anymore, then they could just move to like a cheaper cost of living area if that's something open to them. That's why I want to talk about grants. But in the spirit of this AI Startup Rodeo, Jonas, can you tell us how AI has kind of changed the landscape for new contributors coming into Bitcoin open source, and if you have any like best practices?
I alluded to this earlier of setting a good first impression, because it's really easy to vibe code anything and just fire open a PR. But as you can imagine, like, these projects are seeing a lot of that. And so if you show up and it's very clear that you didn't write your PR description, or that your code is like has a lot of M dashes in it, or like it's just like it's very clear that you didn't do this work, it's not going to be a good reflection of you, and it's not something that people want to invest in. And so, I've actually seen this happen more and more with foreigners who maybe English isn't their first language. They'll often like write the code by hand, and then in their English descriptions, they'll use like ChatGPT or whatever to do the translation from their native language, and it gets some of the words wrong, and it's very clear that it's not a human writing it. And then like the project will even just like close it, or no one will look at it. And so you just got to be sensitive to the fact that if you've vibe coded something, or you're using something that isn't human, that it's just not that hard, and therefore you're probably going to not be taken this seriously. So it's just a reality of the current world that we live in. I think it'll happen more and more. And so I think now's in fact like a really good time to get involved with open source, because establishing your reputation before your OpenClaw, or whatever is opening PRs on your behalf, is probably a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I've been on the receiving end of this, where a couple of projects I'm involved with, we get like a wave of PRs open by people that used AI, and something that like isn't specific to somebody that, you know, vibe coded a PR, but like there wasn't even like a concept acknowledgement, like a concept act. Nobody actually said this is a good idea to do. And it's kind of interesting in that every time someone opens one of these, it takes time away from reviewers and maintainers that could be spending that time, you know, building something else or doing something else in the project, especially when you have projects that like have a bunch of open tickets that say, we need you to work on this kind of stuff. But a funny story of a cautionary tale in one of the projects I'm involved with is somebody was consistently opening up vibe coded PRs. It was taking a lot of time away from reviewers. It wasn't adding a lot of value. They were getting a lot of things wrong. And a couple maintainers very gently said, you know, can you please not do this, or please double check your work before you open the PR? And the response from the PR author a few times was so obviously written by an LLM. Like they were using an LLM to vibe code the PR, but to also like respond to the comments. And like it was so exhausting because at some point you're like, I think somebody asked, am I talking to a human here? So that is not a good thing to do. Do not, because people will remember you if you do something like that. But the upside, like Jonas said, is like if you can make good contributions now, I feel like you will stand out even more because, like, comparatively, what we're looking at, so some of the stuff is like not so great.
I would also
yeah.
say, I just want to also add, like, you know, anonymity is really important to the Bitcoin culture. So pseudonymity and anonymity, and it doesn't like. I in fact would be, you know, very comfortable with someone new showing up, but like take the effort to change the Space Invader avatar to something else. Like just like make it look like you've put some effort into building like an identity, and you aren't just, you know, an open claw agent, because those are just, you know, human cues. Like we're all human and we're all like using these heuristics to figure each other out. And those cues are really important. And so, yeah, I think just a little bit of effort to show people you're human. You know, if you've started your, you know, a new GitHub profile today, and then you've opened, you know, a huge PR with a monster diff, tomorrow, it's like, you know, I don't know, like you haven't put any effort into this. So, yeah, I think like longevity of your profile and your, you know, that your online identity matters. You know, showing up in multiple places, contributing to sort of like the human discourse part. It doesn't, you know, we don't need a driver's license. We just need like some effort to show that you're going to stick around and it's worth investing in you. And as we said a few different times, like every time you contribute to a project, whether it's a comment or it's a PR or it's asking a question, someone else then has to take the time to assess, is that a contribution that is valuable? And so, yeah, I would be thoughtful about what you're asking of others, and sort of like treat others how you would want to be treated. You know, we don't want random people showing up to our doorstep and asking us for stuff, if they're not going to give anything in return.
Yeah. Yeah, I like how you mentioned engaging with the community, because not only is that good for all the reasons that you listed, but as an individual working in Bitcoin open source or trying to break into it, there's a little bit of a support system that you can get by doing that, because there are not many other people in the world that are working on these kinds of problems in this type of framework as you. And so in some ways too, like when you kind of put forth effort to show that you truly care about this and you want to solve the problem correctly, you're also gaining like a little bit of a network, which can be really helpful in the long run. Jonas, do you want to talk about some success stories?
I could talk about some success stories, but I also want to clearly leave some Q&A time. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're a great success story. I'm really proud that you're involved in this, and, you know, given your current stage of life, like you're not writing these long, huge PRs, because you just don't have 60 hours a week to dedicate to this stuff. But you make Bitcoin better by thinking about onboarding others and what that experience is like. And when I first got involved, or when I first started working at ChainCode, there was very little educational and onboarding infrastructure. And I think we've really tried to build those rails so that strangers with no background can get up to a level of contributing, with some paths. That said, like, we also don't want to be the blocker to tell anybody who can, to king anyone, or to say like you're in and you're not. And so there's lots of different ways to do it. But our boss program, I think, is sort of like the thing that is working best for us these days. And we've had some really great outcomes. We're currently wrapping up our 2026 cohort, but we have folks that were like an English teacher that was working in Korea, who really didn't have that much coding background. He now works on PayJoin, and we're really proud of Ben Allen. We have like someone who was a recent CS grad from Panama who is working on LDK and Lightning jamming stuff. And so like it doesn't. What's great about having an open and accessible program is that we just don't care about your background. We don't ask for resumes. We don't ask for references or anything like that. Like, you just show up and you do good work. And it's our job to find you sort of your home where you can continue that work. So yeah, I think there's every shape and size is welcome, and it doesn't matter. Like, obviously working on scalable, big systems is always great, but there's also a place for people that don't have that much software background but are really driven and really want this, and they can find their home too.
Should we do some Q&A?
Yeah. I think we had one question. Jimmy, do you have a...
Since we're
Oh, okay. Anybody else have any questions? Oh, Ted, go for it.
Sort of a generic question, which is, do you feel like the vibe coding era poses any degree of existential threat to maybe, I would say specifically Bitcoin, but maybe something that Bitcoin is related to?
Yeah. He's asking about the do you think the vibe coding era poses any significant threat to Bitcoin or in open source in general related to it, outside of what you already talked about, Jonas?
Yeah. I guess like the things, there's a few things I'd be concerned about. One is just, I've noticed this with myself, like vibe coding makes me lazy, and it's just so easy to have something that you feel is productive very quickly that it's really hard for me to like put my blinders on and like put my hard hat on and really like bear down and look at every line of code. So I would say, that's just something that is, look, I have the highest regard for the folks that work on these projects, and they've done it a long time without any augmentation, let's call it, with that kind of ease. I just wonder whether we'll just get used to it. And I'd say the other thing is, and maybe this isn't a fully formed thought, but like trust like becomes it's sort of the currency of how Bitcoin works at some level. So it's because it's a trustless system, you have to like trust some things. And I think the dependency work that especially like projects like Bitcoin Core, like the work that they put into monitoring upstream dependencies and minimizing those dependencies, and just like owning a lot of that ecosystem is admirable. And I guess like vibe coding just makes everything move fast, and this isn't a project that is designed to move fast. It's sort of like a big battleship that you can make very small movements with. And maybe that's, I know that's been a criticism a long time. Like, we need to be moving faster. We need to be doing more innovation, more experiments. But Bitcoin is really much more, defense first. And so, as like the world speeds up, the question is does that speed come to our doorstep? And are we like, is there something that moves very deliberately? Like, is that going to match with the reality that's going to be coming in the next 6, 12, 18 months?
Great. We have any other? Oh, yeah, Nick.
Yeah, so I'm interested in kind of like how do you move fast and use AI, but also have like a super hardened like Bitcoin kernel. I know Carl Dong started a project, and then I think Charlatan kind of working on it. But does ChainCode have anything to do with the Bitcoin Core project, or is that a thing, focus or anybody you know?
Yeah, the kernel is a great project, and I think is sorely needed. And it's not been put down. So there's a workable kernel that you can use right now. Um, and it's not something that ChainCode owns or anything like that. It's Carl was here when he started that project, but there's been a lot of contributors, including Fanquake and Corey Fields and as you mentioned, the Charlatan, who goes by Sedated now. Um, so yeah, there's bindings being built. There's definitely like an ecosystem that's now working more with the kernel, and I think is very healthy for Bitcoin at large.
Any other questions? Oh, one more. Yeah.
So there's regulation that's about to pass, and hopefully, right, and that's going to open the floodgates to banks and really core kind of derivatives of Bitcoin, which kind of puts at risk the best factor or the best feature of Bitcoin is like it's limited to 20 million Bitcoin. Like it is the open source
Right.
kind of rush of big
Right.
to it.
Yeah. Jonas, he was asking about how the regulatory system fits within the Bitcoin ecosystem as far as like the open source side, and how you guys at ChainCode think through um, the different gotchas that are around that sort of like, fast changing world that's happening right now in the United States.
Yeah. I don't have a great answer. We've been involved with like just like Bitcoin Core devs being sued for IP kind of stuff and Craig Wright stuff. But in terms of financial regulations, everything we do is not for profit and is done under the MIT license. So the MIT license hasn't really been tried in court, which I think is a really interesting legal test. But it says, no guarantee, right on the license. So it should be pretty cut and dried to me. But yeah, we don't worry about that too much. I'd say like the Lightning world and the LSP land, like there's probably more going on there, but that's not something that we're just contributing to the libraries. We're not running any LSPs or money, things that could be interpreted as money transmitters. So not an issue.
Does that answer your question?
My question was mostly focused on like how banks are going to get into it and they're going to get.
Oh, so now I understand it. He wants to know, I guess, I don't know if it probably would have has anything to do with what you guys do, but he's more concerned about how, like, once banking gets introduced into the Bitcoin space more and more, it leads to sort of like these derivatives, turtles all the way down, paper Bitcoin basically, and
Yeah.
how that affects open source and the $21 million cap.
Yeah. I mean, too late. Like we already have banks, and there's nothing we can do to stop them. And this is a permissionless system. Anyone's allowed to, whether we want them here or not. Like anyone can participate. So I don't have much interest in DATs or derivatives or honestly trading. So I don't have strong opinions, but it's not something that we spend any time on at ChainCode.
Yeah, does that answer the question for you? Okay, yeah, I think they was just curious how how open source thinks about that.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions? All right. I think anybody gonna apply for ChainCode boss? Maybe. Any?
You'll have
I
to
got
unfortunately wait a
got
few
one
months.
smile
But...
over here.
All right, one smile.
I got one smile.
Yeah, like I think look, there's so much. I know this is a an AI conference, and there's just so much to do. I hope someone's thinking about agentic payments and Bitcoin's role in that, and I hope that people are thinking about like the hard infrastructure that undergirds all of this, and thinking about contributing to that, and yeah, AI's moving quick, so I imagine y'all will be busy.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jonas and Satsi, for coming to the rodeo and explaining ChainCode and the boss program and everything you guys do. Great for Bitcoin. So just a round of applause from everybody. So keep
Thanks,
doing
all.
the great work you guys do. Thank you very
Great.
much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Okay.
Take
Bye,
care.
y'all.
Bye.
Bye.